I'm so glad. I'm so glad to see you all today. So yes, our focus today will be how eco-technology contributes to the SDGs to promote green growth and improve sustainability. And I'd first like to hand over to Freya to introduce our first speaker for today.
I'd like to introduce Jasper to Moody. He is an 11-year-old boy from Australia. He is a child author of the UNESCO Voices of Future Generations Children's Rights Initiative and wrote the book Stanley and Epic. He is passionate about taking practical actions to protect our environment for future generations. His book is illustrated by Celia Tian, who is an illustrator and comic artist based on Ontario, Canada. Now we welcome Jasper to introduce his book.
Thank you, Freya. It's an honor and a pleasure to talk to you today about eco-technologies in the SDGs. I wrote Stanley and Epic to promote development of the SDGs, so I and many others would have a future. I also think that we should figure out solutions to climate change, because if we don't act now, we won't have time to act. Some people may say that we don't have advanced enough technologies, but in truth, the technologies exist now. In fact, we have all this technology that no one is putting to use, and we should be using it to save the earth. It all comes down to technology. And to prove this, I want to tell you about a formula called IPAT, or I equals P times A times T. The formula IPAT is like some scales. Put too much weight on one side and it will crumble. The I stands for impact, more specifically, environmental impact, like climate change or the waste from our homes. The more I, the more impact. But what controls I? That's where P, A, and T come in. P stands for population. The more people, the more impact. The A stands for affluence. Affluence is how rich we are. And generally, the more money we have, the more we consume, which creates more impact. The T stands for technology. This is the one of the three that can actually reduce impact if we use it properly and help offset the P and the A. Is there anything we can do about the P? No, I for one am not a fan of killing people. What about the A? We want to be richer. So if we want to support the SDGs, we need to focus on the T, technology. My research for Stanley and Epic showed that all this technology exists today, and we have access to them. If every home was sustainable, we would have more food from gardens, more safe animals, sustainable power that costs less, and much less water waste. So to show you some of the technologies I discovered, here's a passage from Stanley and Epic. Chapter 2 from Stanley and Epic. Who's there? Stanley asked nervously. He looked around the room but saw no one. He even looked out the window, but all he could see was muddy brown. There was no response, and Stanley thought that maybe he was hearing things. Still, he wanted to be sure. I said, who's there? Stanley repeated with a bit more seriousness. Then the mysterious voice said, I'm a ghost, boo. Stanley loved science and knew that ghosts weren't real, so he was still puzzled. I don't believe you, said Stanley. I'll tell you why I'm sad if you tell me who you are. A smooth, quiet voice started talking shyly, as if it were afraid of saying something wrong. My name is Epic. That stands for Environmental Protection Intelligent Computer. I am a sustainable home, you see. Cool, replied Stanley, walking around the room since he couldn't tell exactly where the voice was coming from. Have you been here all along? Yes, said Epic. A crazy genius engineer invented me to be the most sustainable home on the planet. But then she disappeared one day after doing an experiment with nanoparticles. Since then, nobody has known about me. She was like my mum, and after she was gone, I became afraid of what other people might think of me. Well, you see, I have powers, Epic admitted cautiously. Stanley was amazed, but also thought that Epic sounded sad and lonely. Wow, Stanley exclaimed. You're incredible, Epic. but I'm sorry about the crazy genius engineer. It must be scary not to have anyone to talk to about your powers. Since you're here, I've noticed that you're special and would like to tell you about my powers, Epic said bravely. He described his special powers as sustainability. Epic could use the sun power to power all the energy needs for the house and form it into beams to illuminate the entire house. All of the windows could become solar panels and make it dark or light inside the house to capture more sun. Epic could soak up nearby plastics and waste and use them to build things. This meant that Epic could build structures out of waste or sustainable materials and create whatever he wanted. He admitted sheepishly that he always wanted to make a big tree house for the backyard. Epic could make fresh water out of air even if the air was polluted. He had a habitat in the secret basement underneath the house's foundation, which was accessible only to animals from the outside. Epic could grow plant-based meat and vegetables sustainably in a secret rooftop garden that was also a butterfly sanctuary. An Epic who had so much intelligence that he could tell when people were at home, so that the lights and heating would only come on when they were needed, and there is no wasted power. So this means you can grow your own water, grow your own food, source your own energy, reuse waste materials for building, and create habitats for biodiversity, asked Stanley, who was amazed at what Epic was telling him. Why doesn't everyone know about you? Well, you see, I've been hiding from other homes. I'm kind of shy, Epic admitted, but I'm scared what other people would think of me. You shouldn't be ashamed of what you are, Stanley said reassuringly. You're amazing. Now that you know about so much about me, you should tell me why you're crying earlier. Epic reminded Stanley. As promised, Stanley told his own story to Epic, and they talked through the night about things they had in common and how it was important for both of them to get past being afraid of what people thought of them. That's the end of chapter 2. I hope you like it. As you can see, much of the technology to save the world exists today. I hope you will join me to spread the word about the important role eco-technology plays to stop climate change and help us finish up the SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jasper. That was an amazing speech, and I really liked your chapter of your new story, which is coming out very soon, or is already out, which you can buy on Amazon. I'd just like everyone to give him a little clap. Who's the speakers? If the speakers can give him a clap. Congratulations for the book launch. And thank you very much for your wonderful speech. I'd like to now go on to Jonah. Jonah is a founding eco-counselor of the Cambridge Schools Eco Council, award-winning UNESCO Voices of Future Generations Child Rights Initiative alumni, and a child author of The Great Green Vine Invention, The Cosmic Climate Invention, and other books. So yes, Jonah, would you like to
Thank you very much, Nico and hello. It's brilliant to be able to join from the west coast of Canada for this eco seminar, which will be focusing on eco-technology challenges and potential contributions to sustainability. My name is Jonah David, and I'm 15 years old now. I'm a citizen of 4 countries, Canada, the UK, Switzerland, and Germany, and a student of Winchester College in the UK. I'm also a co-founder of the Cambridge Schools Eco Council and helping to organise local climate strikes before the pandemic. And I served for nearly 5 years as a child author for the United Nations Voices of Future Generations Children's Initiative, with 4 books published and translated into different languages. I'd especially like to congratulate fellow child author Jasper, my friend, who joins us today from Australia, where he serves as the UN Voices of Future Generations child author for Oceania. He's launching his first book on a very special eco-technology idea internationally today, and it's absolutely brilliant. In the work we've done, We've seen firsthand the sheer determination of many students across the globe who are making a commitment to have a positive impact in shaping our future. This eco seminar proves that. We are all coming online together despite the pandemic that has plagued our planet for the past 17 months. Feels like it's been ages. However, sometimes it's more important to try and take things on a slightly longer term perspective. 30 years ago, when my parents were around my age, the world was a very different place. Smartphones barely existed, the internet had only really just begun, and solar and wind power generated less than 10 terawatt hours of electricity in the global energy mix. Now, not only do 4.8 billion people, 78% of the world population, have access to a smartphone, but internet has become the largest worldwide source of information, and solar and wind power have surpassed 2,400 terawatt hours, which when combined with other green renewable technologies currently provide over 11% of global energy. Over half of this increase in sustainable energy happened in the last decade. Cleaner, greener eco-technologies such as renewable energy resources have a long way to go, but they're developing faster than ever before. We can see so much that's changed in the last 30 years, how many lives have been transformed and how many people now rely on ecotech innovations that were only just being tested a few years ago. Now, please, can everybody imagine what the next 30 years could look like if we don't let despair over global crises, including the climate change emergency, land and biodiversity loss, and the global COVID-19 pandemic overwhelm us, if we can continue building on the hard work done before us. What exactly will happen, we can't be sure, but from the widespread global commitment to the Paris Agreement and the UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, the growing progress of sustainable companies and responsible investment, and millions of new directions for eco-technologies, there is a cause for hope. Most importantly, there are many courageous young people who are ready and willing to stand up for the world, for their future, our future. Basically, I'm asking everyone to get creative. Let's think of new ways for ecotech and all other solutions to advance our world's Sustainable Development Goal 4 on quality education, SDG 7 on renewable energy, SDG 9 on innovation infrastructure, and SDG 13 on climate action, among others. We can all work together to seek new ways to recover and build back better, or build forward from the pandemic. As examples, there are 3 particularly exciting new ideas that I can imagine over the next 30 years that I'd like to highlight today. Some of you might be the ones to help make them happen. First, I think that there is still potential for further development of green renewable energy, such as wind, solar, hydro, wave power, geothermal, and even fusion, and also potential exponential improvements to energy efficiency in the global grid at all scales, so that even schools, universities, companies, and families can power their own energy consumption or more, advancing on SDG 7 and SDG 13 climate action. Second, we need a circular economy system to grow new, healthy, animal cruelty-free foods and to reuse and recycle absolutely all waste, especially plastics, as Jasper's highlighted, so that natural resources can be more sustainably managed, rather than degrading our ecosystems through extraction, advancing SDG 2, Zero Hunger, and also SDG 12, Sustainable Consumption and Production. Third, we need new green legislation with smart local and global internships and job systems so that all youth, actually everyone, can simply go online and be upskilled and then matched instantly with tasks to help meet the next generation of sustainable development goals, such as green jobs, restoring natural areas, or harvesting rainwater directly from clouds, helping cities to adapt to our future. If youth and indeed all workers can also be matched with financing, they can earn decent green living, and we can all help activating ecotech to advance SDG 8, sustainable decent work for all, while also contributing to all the others, such as SDG 6, access to clean water, SDG 15, life on land, and SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities. The next few years are going to be the most difficult in human history, and the crises we face are on a completely different scale to anything we have had to overcome before. But I believe in all of us and the difference we will make in working towards our future, the future we want. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonah, for that inspiring speech. And now I'd like to introduce Stanley Fernando. He is a research associate in Resolve's Washington, D.C. His work involves finding and implementing new ways to protect endangered wildlife from extinction, to prevent illegal deforestation, and foster human-wildlife coexistence.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Great. Okay, I'm going to share my screen as well. Thanks for the introduction. Oh, can I have access to share the screen from the host?
You should be able to share now.
Great. Okay, can you guys see my screen? Great. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Sanjay Fernando, and I'm a wildlife conservationist based out of Resolve Washington, D.C. office. And today I'm going to talk to you about how we can use technology to protect wildlife and their habitats. And these really help advance Sustainable Development Goal number 15, life on land. So we are so lucky to live on an amazing planet with beautiful, diverse landscapes, amazing animals, and a wide variety of wildlife. However, some of these animals that we know and love, they're risked with extinction. Forest elephants, for example, in Central Africa could go extinct within the next 10 years. There are only 1,000 mountain gorillas remaining on Earth, and lions, once plentiful across the African continent, their populations have dropped by 70% in the last 50 years. So for us to understand how we can save these endangered species and prevent them from going extinct, we first need to understand what are the main causes that are causing their populations to decline. And so those causes are poaching, habitat loss or deforestation, and human-wildlife conflict. Today, I'm going to explain briefly what each of these are, and then talk about some technologies that we're developing at Resolve that are helping to address each of these and keep wildlife and their habitats safe. So poaching is the illegal hunting of wildlife. And so although wildlife species are protected, we've created national parks for them to live in safely. Sometimes people will go in illegally and hunt wildlife that they're not supposed to. For example, elephants are hunted for their tusks or ivory, rhinos are hunted for their horns, and tigers are hunted for their skin and their bones. Other animals like the mountain gorillas that I showed you earlier, or orangutans, they're not hunted so much like rhinos and elephants, but they're threatened by the second major threat, and that's deforestation. And that's really caused by illegal logging and mining. And so what this means is that the tropical forests that gorillas and orangutans and monkeys and a number of those other species call home, they're being cut down on a massive, massive scale. And so they're losing their homes and their habitats. The third major threat is human-wildlife conflict. So as you all know, the human population has expanded rapidly over the last few decades. And so we now live in areas that historically were inhabited by wildlife. So, and again, as I said before, even though we've created national parks, the animals don't quite know these boundaries like we do. So sometimes they'll venture out of the parks into the communities and villages that surround the areas. And here they can sometimes, in the case of lions, tigers, leopards, and snow leopards, they can sometimes feed on cows and goats. And in the case of elephants, they can destroy crops, feeding on bananas or watermelons or other fruits and vegetables grown by local farmers. So although for all of us, loving wildlife is really easy, for the people who live with them, sometimes there can be some challenges. So retaliation for livestock killing. So the communities that live in these parks, when they lose their livestock or their crops, or sometimes the people themselves are put in danger, they will retaliate and kill these animals out of fear. And so for lions, tigers, leopards, and snow leopards, the leading cause of death and population declines is human wildlife conflict. And for Asian elephants who don't have tusks like the African elephants, or fewer of them do at least, poaching is not their biggest threat, but for Asian elephants, it's actually human elephant conflict. So now that we understand a bit about the background and how kind of the biggest threats to all of these species, I'm here to tell you about how technology can help park protectors, the rangers on the front lines, better conserve wildlife and their habitats. So these national parks tend to be really, really vast, but unfortunately they can usually only afford to hire a small number of rangers. So that makes it really hard for this small team of people on the ground to monitor all the wildlife and the threats, potential threats to them across really, really large areas. So to help them, we have developed TrailGuard AI. And so TrailGuard, you can think of it as a security system or a security camera for national parks. So on the left here, you'll see the actual camera. And so it's a smart camera that uses artificial intelligence. So it's a good way to put it is a camera with a brain. So the same way that you and I can tell the difference between a person and a zebra, we've programmed this camera to be able to take pictures and really understand the difference between what is a person or a deer or a zebra. And so it's programmed that if it detects a person or a logging truck or a lion or other human wildlife conflict prone animal, it can send that alert to park rangers so they can go out there and act immediately to stop poaching or to stop logging or to stop human wildlife conflict before it happens. So rather than how can we react and being reactive, it's how can we actually be proactive and prevent these threats before they happen. So in the example of poaching, is the way TrailGuard works is, and there are these really tiny cameras about the size of my index finger. And so they're hidden on trees and vegetation along trails that poachers are known to take in as they enter parks. So again, it'll take a picture of anything that goes by. It's triggered by motion. So if a bird flies by or if it's a deer, it'll take a picture. But if a person goes by, it knows how to do that. And then it'll send that image in real time to the rangers. So here's kind of a little schematic that describes it. It knows there's a person, it'll send that. And if it works in places even where there's no cell coverage, so in remote national parks where a phone doesn't work, it'll still be able to send this alert. And the rangers at the park headquarters or out in the field will be able to get an alert on their phones saying, hey, we've seen a person, they could be a poacher, let's go out and react straight away and try to get them before any animals are harmed. So here are a couple of examples of our technology working in a park in Kenya, where we found a couple of people who were coming in illegally and trying to set some snares. We were able to catch them before they were able to harm any wildlife. So here's one example of technology working to save lives of animals. Similarly, we can also use this same camera system, but changing the model instead of looking for humans to look for logging trucks. So, and we put these on the access roads outside parks where logging trucks would use to get in and cut down trees. So it's able to detect all kinds of different trucks. And again, if it's an animal or something else, it won't do anything. But if it's a truck, it knows to send that alert and actually alert the forest managers or park rangers and let them go investigate before any harm is done and trees are cut down. So finally, for human wildlife conflict, it's kind of the inverse of people going into protected areas and harming wildlife or or their homes is now, in the case of animals leaving the parks and going to communities, wouldn't it be great if there was a way that we could stop? We knew, hey, a tiger is leaving the park boundary and might go into a village and kill a cow or a goat, or an elephant is leaving the park and might go raid crops from a local farmer. So we can actually send those alerts to the communities as well, so that they can be aware and be vigilant and prevent any harm from happening. And we can also send those alerts to rangers, so they can go out and move the wildlife away safely before they enter the community areas. And one cool example of using technology is Resolve also has a program in Tanzania where we train rangers how to use drones to move elephants out of crop fields and community lands and back into the national parks. And elephants, even though they're hundreds of times bigger than bees, are really, really scared of bees. And the reason that the drones work is that the buzzing sound the drones make sound like bees. So we take advantage of that natural fear elephants have of bees and use these drones to help shepherd them back safely into the parks before they cause any damage and protect people's livelihoods. So to summarize, we've created one technology. We've realized that the three biggest threats are poaching, habitat loss, and human-wildlife conflict. We've created one camera system for national parks that can run different models to address each of these three use cases. And so right now we've implemented this in 7 parks in Africa. By the end of the year, we hope to be in 30 parks in Africa, and we've chosen Africa first because that's where poaching tends to be most intense. But by the end of next year, we hope to be in 100 parks across the world. And so together, we can help elephant families and families of rhinos and tigers and leopards and all the animals we love live in peace without fear of being harmed. Thanks so much for listening to me. If you'd like to learn more about our work on conservation technology, you can go to our website at resolve.ngo or our Facebook and Instagram pages. And you can contact me at my email address listed here. That's sfernando@resolve.ngo. And I'd be happy to answer any more questions on our work during the question and answer session later. Thank you so much for your time and for your commitment to conservation.
Thank you so much, Fernando. We're going to go straight to our next speaker. Dan Adams is a co-founder and CEO of Amber Electric to shift Australia to 100% renewable energy, and a winner of the MTV Free Your Mind Social Justice Award. So yes, I'll hand straight to you.
Thank you, Nico. It's great to be here, and lovely to see you all and to hear these amazing stories about the incredible work that's going on in the world. As you mentioned, I'm the founder of a technology company called Amber in Australia. And our focus is helping shift Australia to 100% renewable energy. And I really enjoyed reading Jasper's book because the technology that we're building is actually in some ways quite similar to EPIC in Jasper's book. We help people use devices in their house to support the transition to renewable energy. So maybe to step back and explain a little bit more about that, I should start at the beginning, which is to say that I have been really passionate about sustainability and the environment since I was very young. About probably 10 years old, I started to get very involved in climate change and sustainability, and was really concerned about how we could protect our planet. And I remember learning back then about climate change, and I remember thinking to myself, when I grow up, I'm going to build some technology, renewable energy technology that is cheaper than coal and gas, which is polluting the world, and then everyone will buy that, use that renewable technology, and we'll solve the world's problems and we'll solve climate change. And fortunately, that's already happened. I didn't have to invent that technology. Wind and solar power is actually now the cheapest form of power in the world. It's much cheaper than coal and gas power, which is polluting the world. And so you might ask yourselves, why is so much of the world's power still coming from coal and gas that's damaging our atmosphere and leading to dangerous climate change? And there are a few reasons for that. One is that the world is like a big ship, and it takes quite a long time to turn it around and get it moving in the right direction. But the other is that even though wind power and solar power are cheap, it's not always windy and it's not always sunny. And so that renewable power isn't always available in the grid when we want to run our heating or run our air conditioning or watch TV. And so, one solution to that would be to get big batteries, like is happening in lots of places around the world, and charge those batteries when there's wind and solar power available, and then discharge that power when people need it. But actually a much cheaper and much more sustainable way is just to help people use that wind and solar power when it's available in their electricity grid. Help people run their washing machines, do their drying, run their heaters, run their air conditioners at the times that the wind is blowing and the sun is shining, so they can use that more sustainable renewable power rather than using power that comes from coal or gas. And so that's what we do with Amber. We are a new type of electricity retailer in Australia. And we give our customers direct access to what's called the real-time wholesale electricity price. So when there's lots of wind power and solar power in the grid, that power is really cheap. And then when it's coming from expensive coal and gas, it's more expensive. And so what that means is it gives an incentive and a motivation for people to try and use that cheaper wind power and solar power when it's available in the grid. And so we have an app where customers look at our app and they go, right now there's lots of wind power available in the grid. The price is really cheap because there's all this plentiful wind power that's good for the world. I'm going to look at that app and I'm going to run my washing machine right now, or I'm going to run my dishwasher right now, rather than using it later in the day when that power would have been coming from coal or gas. But where we're going now is actually starting to build the technology to automate all of that, a bit like Epic in Jasper's book. So that we're building the technology to automate household batteries, electric vehicles, and hot water systems, pool pumps, air conditioners, to automatically use that wind power and solar power when it's available in the grid. So the way that would work is, imagine you've just got, your parents have just got home from work and they've got an electric vehicle. They plug in that electric vehicle at 8 p.m. But at 8 p.m. it's not very windy and the sun's gone down and all the power's coming from coal and gas. And so you'll put into our app, I want my electric vehicle charged from sustainable sources and I want it to be ready to go when I need to go to work tomorrow morning. And we'll automate your electric vehicle to charge at 2 in the morning when there's lots of wind power in the grid and that price of power is really cheap and sustainable. And you wake up the next morning and your car is charged from wind power at 2 in the morning rather than from coal and gas at 8 p.m. And we're doing similar things with controlling people's air conditioners. So for example, you say, I want my house to be between 18 and 24 degrees, and we will control your air conditioner to cool your house down when there's lots of solar power in the middle of the day, cool it right down to 18, and then let the temperature increase up to 24 degrees at the times when the power is coming from coal or gas. So automating lots of devices in your house to help your house become more sustainable, and using those appliances in your house as a tool to help drive the transition to a future powered by renewable energy, which is pretty cool to think that all those devices in your home can be heroes in the story of driving the world to renewables. But as Jasper said in his book when he was speaking earlier, we actually already have most of the technology that we need to solve climate change. there's more technology that we can build, like we're doing at Amber, to help try and accelerate that change. And there are many companies around the world like us that are building the technology to try and accelerate the change. But what we also need is all of the people in the world, like you and I, to be speaking out about this, raising awareness about climate change and sustainability, and how important it is to turn this big ship around that is our society, and start it to move in a more sustainable direction. And so learning more about these issues, learning more about the technology that's going to create a sustainable future, telling your friends and family about it, going to the youth climate strikes, are all really important things that we can all do. And trying to buy more sustainable products, encouraging your parents to buy more sustainable technologies, are all really important steps on this path to building a more sustainable future and achieving the sustainable development goals. And I'm really excited about the future. So much has changed in the world since I was your age, and has moved in such a positive direction. And I feel pretty excited about the technology that you all created in your future, your generation will create, and the sustainable future that we can build together. So thank you for having me here.
Yeah.
Helena.
Yeah. Why don't you thank everyone and move on to questions?
For your wonderful speech. And should we move on to the question?
Yeah. Quickly before we do that, I'd like to give everyone who spoke today a big round of applause, because all the speeches were amazing. Yes, and then we'll move on to questions. Okay. Yeah, Frey, why don't you do questions?
Maybe.
Yeah, there's one question.
Yeah, David and Nawani, you have a question?
Oh, I think
We have to read them out.
yeah, we have to read them out.
Okay.
I think there is one from Junaid Islam. And this one goes to Dan.
Yes.
Yeah. Does your company Amber have links with Oceania?
Oceania? I don't know what Oceania is. Maybe you need to teach me. Post in the chat, and I will check it out.
It's a search engine that plants trees. Let's go with that.
Ah,
I think
really?
it's based in Europe, though. It's a German startup. So
cool.
yeah, I'll post the link in chat for anyone who wants to do it. Why don't you do the next
sounds awesome.
question?
Okay. I don't think.
Oh, there is another question from Junaid again to Dan about some info about the because he saw some info about them on your web page. I think that's why he was asking.
Really? Okay. I don't know about that, but I should look into it if it's on our webpage.
Yeah. If we don't have any, I'll ask Junaid's question later so that we get the other panelists to have a question. So yes. Do you see any other questions in chat, Freya? Or if the panelists have questions for each other, you can also ask them. Okay, this is a question for Sanjeev. What are you planning to create any other technologies in the future?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So we have a few other different technologies, but with the cool thing about TrailGuard AI is it's one hardware platform that we can use for multiple different use cases. So like I said, we're already using it for poaching, illegal logging, and human wildlife conflict. We have a few other use cases in mind as well. One is what we call river guard. So for in the Amazon, for example, or the Congo Basin, a lot of the logging or any activity really happens by river rather than road, because the rivers are the roads for those ecosystems. So we have what's called river guard, which can detect boats. And so that can be used also to prevent illegal logging and mining, but also for a lot of indigenous communities who live, especially in the Amazon, like the Brazilian Amazon, and they're having their territories being invaded by outsiders and they're at risk. That's a technology that we can use to help indigenous people protect their sovereign lands and all their forests. We're also working on, for example, for clean energy, which is great in wind farms, but one of the potential issues with wind farms is that sometimes birds actually go and are at risk of getting hit by the wind turbines. So we're also working on using that same system to detect birds. And then if we can pair that with some kind of an alarm system that will like scare away the eagles before they go too close to the wind turbines and get injured. So yeah, there's a number of different applications that we're working on, but it's really cool because it's the same same camera, and it's just like you're loading new software onto it to do a different use case. So we're really excited about the possibility of addressing a whole number of conservation applications with one technology. Thanks.
Oh, yeah. Why don't you go first, and then I have another question for Sanjeev.
I think there is another question from Anicia Daniel on Nico. Okay, this is not aimed for anyone in particular, but how do we motivate people to work towards a sustainable future? Because without people's willing participation, it will be very difficult to achieve mass sustainably.
Oh, and then Tanya Hyde also asked to Jasper, where did you get your ideas for books for your book from?
Yeah, so I was in Canada with Nico and Jonah, and I saw that Jonah was writing a book and it looked cool, and I wanted to advocate like that. So then I just did it, and now I'm here.
I mean, I think the question is asking, sorry, where did you get the idea for Epic? Like, what was your motivation between Epic instead of choosing, like, I don't know, a coral reef, someone who saved coral reefs? I mean,
Yes, I guess I just did a bit of research and kind of just was there, and don't know how.
awesome idea. And then, okay, yes. The other question, Jonah, do you want to answer the question about how do we motivate people to work together towards a sustainable future? Because yeah, okay.
So I think working on persuading people to work towards a sustainable future, really, so there are sort of two sides to this. A bit was already covered by Jasper and Dan, and that's that ideally we don't really need to do anything, because as long as sort of the world is well connected enough that everybody knows about the solutions, and the solutions are not only just solving the issues, they're also sort of the cheapest option in their respective categories, then sort of, yeah, the problem will almost solve itself, and there's very easy potential for people to go there and have an absolutely amazing time making use of that opportunity, as sort of based particularly Dan has done. However, the other side to it is through events like these. We need to communicate and spread the word about all of these technologies that maybe aren't like quite there yet, but definitely in the next sort of couple of years will be able to be advanced enough to be put into commercial use. And it's through sort of courageous people who are willing to make it here today that we can actually go somewhere. And even though, you know, this might seem like a very small scale event, every single person here can, throughout the next few years and for the rest of their lives, can actively make a difference.
Thank you very much, Jonah. Do any of the other panelists want to add on to that? Dan, we also have another question for Dan, which is, do you plan on branching out to Europe or any other like global location?
Thank you. We have thought about doing that. At the moment we're focused on Australia. Where we want to get to is there's about 25 million people live in Australia, and our goal is to be starting to automate 1 million smart devices across homes in Australia, so that we can shift enough demand to replace an entire coal-fired power station with wind and solar farms. So that's our first goal. But I think as we get closer to that goal, we might think about expanding to other countries around the world. And I believe that there are some companies similar to Amber. There's one called Tibber in Norway. So if anyone's in Norway, I believe that they're building something quite similar over there. And I think there might be one in Austria doing something similar to us as well. So it's pretty exciting to see that happening.
Great. Yeah, there's three other questions.
Maybe Freya wants to.
Freya, do you want to do the first one by Junaid?
Yes. Stanley, this is a question for you. Will wind farms cause bird migrations to change if they get scared away by the alarms? Could this have unintentional consequences?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I guess there's two parts. Is one where there are already existing wind farms. One thing we're trying to do is prevent any birds from being killed by the wind farms and by the turbines. So yeah, one option is if we detect the birds, we could maybe do some kind of alarm that would help them prevent from getting hit by the big fans. But what we could also do is have that trigger some sort of system to make the fans slow down or stop, so that if they know that there's a bird within a few feet or number of meters, it can slow down and stop so that it won't get killed. But in terms of what that'll actually do to bird migrations, I think that really varies a lot depending on the species. But I think that's why it's really important as we plan clean energy projects, which are really, really important. We do it with the knowledge and the scientific understanding of, are there bird populations here that could be impacted, and making sure that they're not in flyaways or migration paths that birds usually take. So a lot of kind of the technology we have is we're doing our best to adapt and react to the circumstances, and sometimes it's damage limitation, but a lot of that can be avoided is if we do good land use planning and make sure we do our development projects in a way that's sustainable and don't harm wildlife to begin with.
Thank you. We have two more questions and a special recognition from as part of the Voices Future Generations. So for Jasper, how do you, from Aditya Gandhi, how do you find the experience of writing your book and becoming a published author? Are there any people or authors who inspired you? And finally, what effect do you hope to impact on your readers? And this is also for the whole panel. and this is from Anita Basaniake. Hello, I'm 9 years old and I live in Sri Lanka. How can I help the world? Yeah, and then the special recognition is for actually Jennifer Moulton, who is one of our coordinators in the United Arab Emirates, and she's been helping with the with the child authors there. So yeah, those are the two questions. Yeah, hello. Yeah.
So writing a book was really fun and something cool to do. And people that inspired me was probably like Jonah, because he's cool. And I used to read his books as a kid. So yeah. And I hope that the effect that I can get is to get people aware about climate change if they read my books, because that's good.
Great answer. Freya, why don't yeah.
Oh yeah, I think there's another question by Junaid.
Oh.
Would it be possible for me to answer the question about
Yes.
what can I do to help the
Yeah.
world?
Sure.
I think so. I believe this is replying to Seth, I think.
No, it's Anita.
Okay, so
In Sri Lanka.
So from Sri Lanka. Well, at least for me, sort of the first steps are always working. You have a lot of time, but the first steps are working locally and within your own community. And then sort of if you gather together all of your friends and work with sort of your parents and basically all of your community to sort of implement whatever solutions you can find, whether that's really small scale, like turning off lights when you're not using them, or whether that's building a sort of community recycling organization. Like there are tons of different options. And then it's sort of from that local step working on a larger area and eventually your entire country. And then you can possibly, if you want, join an international initiative. And that's sort of when it becomes really exciting. Thank you.
Sanjeev, oh yeah.
Sure, yeah, I can quickly add to that. That was a great answer, Jenna. And Anita, I'm also from Sri Lanka, so great to see you and thanks for joining. And one thing I want to say is you guys are all just so amazing because, and you know, Anita, that you're asking this question at 9 years old. Remember, at that age, I loved wildlife and I knew I wanted to do something with it, but I, other than watching Animal Planet and National Geographic, wasn't doing too much. So it's so amazing just to see all of you guys coming together at events like these, and that these platforms are now there for you to connect and learn about so many different things that are happening across the world, and kind of forming networks and learning about all these great things. So it just gives me so much more hope and inspiration for the future that this next generation is really so committed and passionate about the environment, and not just learning about things, but also already doing things. So you guys are just amazing. I just wanted to say that. There's a group in Sri Lanka called the Wildlife and Nature Protection Society, it's a WNPS, and they have a youth wing. So I'd encourage looking for organizations like that, where they have kind of youth programs that you can join in and meet other people locally. I guess maybe now with the pandemic, there's probably not as many in-person meetups, but hopefully soon we'll get back to normal. But that's a great way of meeting a lot of other scientists who are already doing work, and also learning more about the environment, finding more other, your friends and other people who are committed to this cause that you can learn and grow with, and find ways to work together on initiatives. And as Jonah said, acting locally in your community is the way to start. And I know Sri Lanka, there's a lot of work that can be done and would love to use your help. So keep up the great work and just keep being inspired. So thanks, everyone.
Okay, we have so many more questions for everyone because everyone's just doing such a great job. So we have 2 questions, one from Junaid and one from Sam. So Junaid's question is, Dan, do you get backlashes from the Australian government, who are notoriously adamant in their love for coal? And then another question from Junaid is, Sanjeev, is it possible to get work experience with your NGO? I'm guessing that one would be just emailing. And then, does Sanjeev have a mobile trail guard for poachers? Poachers are likely to learn quickly that spy cameras have been placed nearby to their usual access tracks. Yeah, those are the 2 questions, and there's tons of questions coming in. So Dan, why don't you answer those 2 questions? And then, I mean, the question, and Sanjeev, why don't you answer the two questions? Sorry.
So we would love to see the Australian government doing more to support the transition to renewable energy. We don't think they have been doing enough on that front, but we have actually met with the Australian government and the energy minister and explained our technology and how it is helping the transition to renewable energy while also saving people money. And I think they are very receptive to that message, when it's actually both better for the economy, better for people, and better for the world as well. So unfortunately, they've been supportive of what we're building, but we would obviously like to see them doing more to accelerate the transition to renewable energy. Sanjeev, over to you.
Thanks, Dan. Great work too. Yeah, so 2 questions, I guess. So I'll answer the one about the mobile trail guard. So we usually, when we deploy trail guard in a park, we usually put in between 5 to 10 camera systems. So usually about 10 is kind of our goal. And that's because we think that any park, kind of no matter the size, there's really like 80% of the poaching happens on no more than 10 major trails. So because of vegetation or just in terms of easy access, there are certain trails that people prefer to go on. And so we put the cameras there. And so ideally is, as more poachers get caught, it becomes bigger of a risk and we want less people to go in, and that deters poaching over time. So that's really, we do want that. But I think the point that Sam raises is maybe they move from one trail to a different trail. And ideally is we have, those 10 major trails covered. So if we don't get them on one, we'll get them on another trail. And the good thing is, it only takes, 5 to 10 minutes to set one of these up, and then you can leave them out there for, over a year and they work just fine on their own. So if you've left it out for 3 months and no people have gone by, you can just go put it somewhere else on a different trail. But yeah, over the long term, hopefully it leads to less poaching activity, and that's what we want. And in terms of getting any experience with our NGO, yeah, please, feel free to send me an email. We're happy to take volunteers. Depending on kind of our programs, there may be opportunities to work with us. So yeah, just send me an email and we can try to work something out.
Thank you, everyone. No, I'm not. I think there's 2 more questions.
One of them is
yeah.
Heidi from Sri Lanka. Can I have more information of environmental protection organization in the UAE?
Ooh. So I think it says, yeah, can I have more information of environmental protection organizations in the UAE? I like to volunteer during the summer, which is a great thing to spend your summer doing. And then another question from Junaid. Actually, that question has been answered. Yes. So yeah, that's the question. Would anyone like to answer that? And then I'll conclude with some thank yous to everyone.
I'm not sure, but
I would recommend actually.
Would it
yeah.
be-
Oh. If
no,
you check the
would it
voices
be
of
possible to connect with a sort of expert in the subject from among the other participants?
Hifa?
I was just gonna jump in there. I don't have a specific answer, but I also did my schooling in the UAE, and the Emirates Environmental Group is one of the groups that run competitions and campaigns for students. So that might be something you can look into. And I see Jennifer has posted the same thing on the chat, so that's a good one.
Well, thank you to all our panelists, I'd like to especially thank Jasper, who's launching his book. Go buy it, it's great. On Amazon, and you can buy that in any part of the world. And also I'd like to thank everyone online for attending, and also the Cambridge Schools Eco Council and the Voices of Future Generations, which Hifa is involved with. And also I'd like to thank everyone, and it's truly global. We have people from France, the UK, Africa, South Korea, Australia, Canada, America. We're only missing one continent. And also, so I hope to see most of you at our next eco seminar, which is on Monday next week at 4 p.m. UK time, and it focuses at wetlands, and mangroves and carbon sinks and all that fancy stuff. And and Freya, why don't you handle? You just say thank you, and we'll conclude the session.
Yeah, thank you to all the speakers, and thank you to all the people who had questions. They were very good, and yeah, have a lovely summer.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the session.
Congratulations, Jasper.
Yeah, yes. So I'll hopefully see you all next time. Any concluding remarks?
Before we wrap up the session, I just want to say thank you so much, Nico, for your enthusiasm at this time of the night. You did great. And thank you so much, Freya, as well, for running the session so well. Thank you so much. And thanks to everybody who's joined in from everywhere in the world.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.